So it says access denied, and what I'm really trying to show is that he looks different yet again from what you have when you look at a human. It is the shape. The reflection is rectangular to the shapes. You can calculate shape if only you can sense polarization. Today, nobody can do it. You can tell the material that the reflection came from. I could be sitting here holding up a mask of myself. If a camera looks at this mask, so I don't know who's alive. Replace your lenses with a single flat lens. We design for you the meta surface that can control the flow of the photons just the way you need to get best results. So we developed a system using our own optics, swallowing our own medicine, and said, what can we do with these awesome optics that nobody else can do? Out of the 1.5 billion smartphones that sell every year, they have on average 3 cameras. That's 5 billion cameras. What's another 100 million in the first year? If a technology is out in market for too long, hackers will try to break it day and night, and eventually they may get close. Sometimes they may succeed. You come with a polarization camera and they say, oh my God, I need to go back to high school math, So I think, to me, the most essential part is you need to trust your own judgment. There's no recipe to success. You got to stay humble and at it, and you have to read your customers and the market. Because once you start something, it's a rifle shot. It's not shotgun anymore. And you need to be able to see those early enough so that before it's kind of too late, which is you run out of money, market runs out of interest, moves into a different direction, that you can re-vector, ideally without walking away from what you've already done. How can we do better? What are we missing? Why is this not working faster? You always need to question, are we still tracking? Is this still a viable way to get into a viable market? So we partner with somebody. So our image sensor is 2% us with the most crucial piece, and 98% exists already. We are the only ones today that have the IP and the know-how to bend light in the way we need to create these capabilities. So I joined the New Ventures group, and when I came across the team that later became Flareon, I got so excited that we were able to get the approval to spin out. I would like my children to be contributing citizens of society, specifically my youngest, whom we adopted out of difficult circumstances, and who we spend a lot of time and energy to realize his full potential.
Join us as we welcome Lars Johnsson, Vice President Product, Sales and Marketing at Metalenz, a leader in bringing groundbreaking optical technology to market.
With over 25 years of expertise, Lars is at the forefront of deep tech commercialization, spanning product strategy to global sales. Metalenz is pioneering metasurface optics, fundamentally transforming sensing, imaging, and lighting for mass applications.
His unparalleled insights into scaling new technologies offer crucial perspectives on the future of compact, high-performance optical systems. Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to the Semiconductor Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Salah Nasri, and whether you are an industry veteran or someone who's just curious about semiconductor innovation, this is your podcast. We hit more than 100,000 views in under 6 months, and I want to ask you a small favor. Don't forget to click that subscribe button. Click it, click it, click it, click it. The more subscribers we get, the more dynamic and interesting this podcast will become, and we can bring special guests like our special guest today. So without further ado, it is with great pleasure, and you guys must have heard of this company. If you haven't, you are all in for a treat. Today, I have Lars Johnsson, the VP of Product at Metalenz. So let's dive into the podcast interview. Lars, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Salah, for having us. I'm very excited to be here and join your podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Absolute pleasure. Lars, it is, how can I say, the things I've seen your company do is absolutely mind-boggling. And I cannot wait for our audience to see the work that you are working on. But I want to start first to learn more about you. And pretty much get an understanding of your career overview. So you've led marketing and business development at several companies, driving, of course, growth and market share for new products. Could you give us a snapshot of your professional journey, notably from co-founding Flareon Technologies to your current role at Metalenz today?
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. So I take one step back further, if you don't mind.
Please.
I'm originally from Germany, and I have a chemical engineering degree.
Right.
And I was working in chemical engineering, and I always had run-ins with marketing and never understood how they work. And I decided to quit my job, and I came to America to do an MBA. After I got my MBA,
Where?
at Rensselaer Polytechnic in upstate New York.
Wow.
Most people don't know they even do MBAs. And what attracted me was their focus on management of technology. Coming out of that MBA, I had a chance to join Lucent Bell Labs in 1998. And I was it was a very interesting time at Lucent. Everybody was very innovative. Clayton Christensen from Harvard had issued disruptive innovation books, and they had a new ventures group, which was chartered to work with the brilliant researchers inside Bell Labs to help them find outlets for their new developments if they were not productized by the business units. Mm-hmm. So I joined the new ventures group, and I worked with the person that led the wireless practice. And together we looked at, over 2 years, more than 12 different opportunities. And when I came across the team that later became Flareon, I got so excited that we were able to get the approval to spin out. In 1999, we came to this very hotel for our Silicon Valley Roadshow.
The Sheraton Palo Alto Hotel. Wow.
Not the room, but the hotel.
Oh, wow, wow.
We went up and down Sand Hill, and 3 days later, we had a $10 million term sheet from Sequoia Capital. So it was awesome. Flareon was a really disruptive, game-changing technology. Flareon promoted 4G LTE-style technology when the wireless world was still on 3D CDMA and could barely do any data.
Right.
And we were then battling for 5 years against Qualcomm to get this new OFDM-based technology adopted instead of CDMA. And that ended in Qualcomm acquiring the company for $800 million 6 years later. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was a very good story. So there were 5 of us moving out of Bell Labs. And at the end of it, there were almost 300 people when the company was acquired. And I was on the marketing business development side. The founder, Rajiv Laroya, was then the CTO, and we complemented the team. We brought in the CEO with experience and many other people to help us grow and build. And it was a complete system solution. It started with IP and a good disruptive design. We built chips, we built infrastructure, we built terminals, we built PCMCIA card, if you remember. Or maybe that was before your time.
Yeah. No, I do remember them.
You plug into the laptop and they gave you connectivity to the network. And that was before Wi-Fi was really a thing. So it was an amazing ride at Flareon. And after that was over, when Qualcomm acquired the company, I decided that after being the marketing face, agitating against Qualcomm for the better part of 5 years, I don't want to join the company. And I got a chance to join a startup here in Silicon Valley, and I moved over in 2005.
Okay.
So I've been here for the last 20 years. I was staying in wireless systems. We built chipsets at a company called BSeam for WiMAX. There was an attempt sponsored by Intel to get into the wireless ecosystem, break out of compute and get into wireless. And we, as a small company, we really ran away with the chipset business because small companies are notoriously faster in execution than bigger companies. They have bigger budgets. We have better products. So we were 5 years later acquired by Broadcom for like $330 million or so. And Broadcom in-housed us to build their LTE modems, bringing me back to the Flareon days. But in Broadcom, we spent 3 years to build a competitive modem roadmap for their portfolio. And we were competing for business at Apple at the time against Intel. Intel had purchased Infineon. So a lot of semiconductor companies back and forth. Intel purchased Infineon, which had 3G, 4G modems, and Intel was promoting that solution to Apple against Broadcom. And some higher level deal making between what Intel wanted to do and you name it, got Apple to go with Intel and say, we're using you as our roadmap to get away from Qualcomm. And when Broadcom heard the news, they shut down the modem business. That we can't win big business, and picking up small companies is not an efficient way to go into this very expensive market, because you have to have a global footprint. You have to be compatible in all the networks around the world.
Right.
So that wherever your customers go, your standard, your technology is fully proven and certified. So Broadcom quit. And then I quit Broadcom after they got out. And I joined a small company called Cavendish Kinetics, which was a startup staying in a very interesting part of semiconductors, doing MEMS, microelectromechanical systems.
Yeah.
I call them as semiconductors with moving parts inside. Every semiconductor guy says, oh, OMG, anything but move within my parts.
Oh, wow.
A really hard technology to get right. The company ultimately succeeded, and we built RF components with tiny moving parts inside our chips, used as switches in RF, because if you can build a MEMS switch, you have an all-metal connection, has much lower insertion loss than traditional SOI-based technologies. SOI is a semiconductor and insulator where you have transistors that open and choke a connection, and then you have a lot of insertion loss and you lose signal. And it's one of the biggest problems in wireless technology is your signal strength to the network. So losing signal wasn't appropriate. Our technology became very interesting. And here again, we had our biggest opportunities with Apple, because they appreciate innovative disruptions. And Apple says, I kind of love what you're doing in principle, but I would never buy from you. You guys, I can't implement a key component from a small company. You go away half a year later, and what am I going to do? So this is not going to work. And they ultimately paired us up with Qorvo, which is one of the two large North American semiconductor components, switches, power amplifiers, filters, providers. The other one is Skyworks. They paired us up with Qorvo. Qorvo invested in us, and we productized, and ultimately Qorvo acquired Cavendish. And yet again, it was time for me to go. So I really like small companies. So
why? So why do you like small companies? Why are you not
Why do some people like rodeo and get on a horse and bike? It's a wild ride. It's really exciting. You're at the forefront. There's no latency. What you do has immediate impact. You see it happening right in front of your eyes. You don't spend all day in the conference room doing reviews and budget proposals. It's the immediacy that attracts people to small companies. And it's a high risk undertaking, but North America, I found when I came from Europe, is so much more flexible and forgiving. When you fail, you're not a failure. When you fail, you have unique learnings. If you pay attention. That is. And sometimes what you learn in failing is better than what you learn in winning. Because winning, you don't know if it was you or if the circumstances helped you to be successful. So that, I think, makes it a very unique environment where if you strike out as a person in a company, you start something, you're part of something, years later, it's not successful, it's not the end of your career. You find opportunities to reapply yourself.
Fail fast.
I've been fortunate in not having had that experience of losing. I was so far very, very fortunate in the teams I ended up working with and the technologies they had and how we could together bring it to market. And that's ultimately what led me to Metalenz, the company I'm at today, where I'm running the product side of the business, working with a spin-out team of brilliant PhDs from Harvard that have developed a disruptive technology using semiconductors to produce optics. So optics in sensing, image sensing, depth sensing are very important. And we are now bringing to market new ways of creating optics in the semiconductor foundry, bringing the precision and the scale of the semiconductor business to a market that hasn't really changed in 500 years. You polish optics, you mold something, And that's how we come up with lenses. And we replace those with a much better way of looking at the world. Our initial market is in machine vision systems. But before we get too deep into Metalenz, that was a not so brief background on myself.
Wow. No, I mean, the background is worthy of a podcast of itself. This is really remarkable. So run through me one key thing. I really want to identify this is that you're clearly part of the founding teams with the startups, and how I would love to know from your perspective when it is the end game and you sell the company, okay, like the Florian Technology situation, which was sold to Qualcomm, as you mentioned. How does that feel after, like once it's sold? Do you feel that you lose a little bit of your purpose to an extent? That transition, if you don't mind me asking.
I never stayed around too long. In BCM acquisition by Broadcom, I did stay around. It does slow you down a little bit because big companies have resources. There's a feel of comfort, which also explains why the energy level is different in a startup. And startups drive innovation faster. How you respond at a personal level, that I think is really very different for different people. The brilliant engineers I worked for, they usually didn't slow down because they believe so much and feel so strongly about the concepts they came and the new technologies that if you get acquired before you're fully successful in market, they will push it through. Similar on Marcus' business side, but a little different. If you get acquired after you already have a few generations in play, then you're just more inclined to possibly lean back a little bit and look at what you've done and feel good about yourself, invest your options.
Yeah.
Typically, there's a 2-year holdover when you get acquired, where as you transition and your equity gets converted into big company stock, you vest that over 2 years, which is why a lot of founders and members of a team stay in the acquiring company so that the acquiring company has opportunity to really learn the know-how, get the people and the technology fully up and running and integrated. And then some people may move on again because once you had success, once it's kind of addictive, you want to do it again. If you find the right idea and you see a niche, you want to go for it.
So looking at your track record, looks like that you've got some sort of golden hand. You've not been in a company that's just shut down or filed for bankruptcy, or Chapter 11 or whatnot. What's been could you share with us the traits? What are the traits that make you feel going, this is going to be a big deal? And then you jump onto the next one, and then you jump on the next one. What stands out for you? What makes you say, I'm going to do this? And because it's not the fact that you've just done it once and hallelujah, you've done it twice now.
Well, Metalenz is my fourth go at it.
So you've done it 3 times now.
I've done it successfully 3 times.
Okay.
In the original, where I was part of the early team spinning out of Bell Labs, it was clearly a technology way ahead of what was in market and what people talked about. Everybody was talking about 3G. In Europe, where you're headquartered, Vodafone, T-Mobile, Telefonica, they were spending gazillions to acquire spectrum to roll out 3G, thinking they could do data, which they later learned they couldn't. It was epic. And we had a technology that was designed from the ground up for data. And what you need as a business person joining a brilliant team is you need to be able to really understand what it is they do. And that is that in the founding team, some of the technical people, they're not only brilliant, but they can also explain it. They can bring it down to a level where you catch on. And then it's up to you to believe, and you bring your market understanding and saying, not only can I understand something extremely complicated at a mid-level, as explained to me by the inventors, that I can then make the translation and say, and here's how we take it to market. Here's where the opportunity lies, how we need to execute in order to be successful. That's where you meet the founders and the brilliant people. And that is what has worked for me, that my luck is meeting great people, bring in ability to understand them and translate what they're telling me into something actionable that can be successful in the marketplace. So it's been really fascinating opportunities I had working in Silicon Valley with small companies. Couldn't ask for more.
Yeah. The way you explain it is so on point. If we go back to our academic days, the best professors were the ones that could be able to explain something so complex in such a simple format. Yeah. And I think this is where it's related to even in the business world, right? Tell me one circumstance whereby, I know you've had many lessons in this situation, but what's the biggest lesson? Give me one biggest lesson that you learned in one of those three situations.
I think the biggest lesson is there's no recipe to success. You got to stay humble and at it, and you have to read your customers and the market, because once you start something, it's a rifle shot. It's not shotgun anymore. You don't spray all over the place and see what sticks. You're locked and loaded for one thing that you believe in, but you need to retain the ability to say, what we thought of initially will probably be even better if we make some changes, because we're hearing the customers. And that happened to us in every company. And you need to be able to see those early enough so that before it's kind of too late, which is you run out of money, market runs out of interest, moves into a different direction, that you can re-vector, ideally without walking away from what you've already done, but by re-aiming before you pull the trigger.
Right.
So that's a recurring lesson that in every company. In Flareon, we started off with a 1.25 megahertz narrowband OFDM system. We thought it's a great idea because in North America, CDMA systems were 1.25 megahertz. What we didn't realize at the time is that a 5 megahertz system used in Europe and the rest of the world is better for the system, better for performance, and speaks to operators that are more interested in us. So we had to redesign. We had to change course. The concept was the same. The product was quite different. If I go to BSeam, what we had was a modem that looked like anybody else's until we said, we need to do something to differentiate. And we're adding a second RF front end. So we transmit not through one channel, but we double the signal. We transmit it twice. It gets combined. And how it looks to the network is like a single system with twice the power. Wow. That was the major recipe to success, that we were able to change course when we realized how the market was struggling, us and our competitors, and we got ahead of everybody else. We ended with 2/3 of the market, which is why we got acquired. At Cavendish, the company was originally building variable capacitors for tuning. Tuning antennas are inductor capacitor circuits, LC circuits, and when you can change one or the other, you can tune a system.
Right.
It's brilliant. Nobody cares. What else can we do with our MEMS? We said, why can't we build a metal switch? And people said, you're crazy. Nobody's ever been able to build a metal switch that's reliable, because when you switch, you have two metal contacts. If there's current flowing through, they get hot. Eventually, they stick. It's called stiction. There's a big problem in MEMS. It's the biggest problem in MEMS is stiction. And you say, you can't build a switch. We said, well, maybe we can, maybe we can't. And we gave it a go, and the guys were able to figure it out. We can switch 100 billion times without it sticking. That's what got customers interested and said, this is brilliant. And Qorvo bought the company. So, and, without going too far forward, at Metalenz, we've also made a switch recently.
Really?
Yeah. You got to stay on your toes. You have a brilliant technology. You have a really great team, but you need to read the tea leaves in order to be able to take advantage of what the market gives you.
Marvelous. So currently, so you're doing being overseeing the product vision at Metalenz. What are your key responsibilities there? And what would be interesting to understand is how do you align the product roadmap, market strategy, and of course the revenue goals?
Mm-hmm. So Metalenz is still a small company. We're very efficient. We're fabulous. And we have products, some of which are fairly straightforward to promote. Others are more of a complex system. My actual role is not just VP of product, which means I need to define the product and the roadmap, give the specifications to the team, what the market needs for us to be successful. That's an essential part. but I also run sales and marketing, so I own everything you just said. I need to pair this with a go-to-market strategy. I need to have a channel strategy. I need to have local teams to reach customers. We need to be able to translate our technology and our benefits into collateral that customers can relate to. I drive the engineering team to say, this is the application you need to give me so I can show how it actually works. Right. Because a lot of times you meet people that don't immediately get what's so obvious to you. You need to be able to really communicate. You need to get out of your own head and say, if I put this PowerPoint slide in front of somebody, will they actually know what the hell I'm talking about? That's an art form. It's easier said than done. You probably seen many PowerPoint where you said, oh my God.
Reality check. It's a reality check.
Absolutely. Having the ability to translate, marketing people, we're translators. We translate two ways. The deep technology to the customer and what the customer says back to the engineering team. So with this interface, we do play a role in helping the technology and the smart guys behind us to be able to connect with the customer. And then they have aha moments and say, I really like this. Let's go, guys. So that's where we stand.
Marvelous. Wow. So let's say, for example, the listeners who are listening to our podcast, and who are, of course, maybe unfamiliar, could you briefly describe what Metalenz does? See, I'm going to put you to the test in explaining something very complex into simple elements, and how his technology is poised to disrupt, of course, the optics and the sensor market.
Yeah, and I'll do it with all the slides.
No switches.
No switches. So Metalenz origins date back to Harvard. In the physics department, there's a professor called Federico Capasso, and he's still at Harvard in that lab. And he has worked for eons at Bell Labs. He was there before I was. We were there. We overlapped time-wise. He invented and perfected a technology called metasurface. Metasurfaces are surfaces that when they are hit by electromagnetic waves, light or RF signals, they transform the light or the RF signal by inducing a phase shift, which you can think of as a term you've heard, beamforming.
Right.
So signal comes in, you take the energy, you design your metasurface in a very unique way for the right frequency, responding to a signal coming from a certain angle. You can bundle the power, you can beamform, and you can steer where the signal goes.
Right.
So what we do is not beamforming wireless. We're in the optics space, which is a different frequency, but it's still electromagnetic waves. And in essence, what we do is we bend light. We bend light, we control light unlike anybody else, because we do it in these metasurface optics that have a precision and a nanoscale that we create in the semiconductor foundry, that when photons come in, we can tell them exactly where to go based on what the customer application requires or what the use case requires. No other optic can do this in a single flat layer that you can put on top of any image sensor or light source to create from one optical element. My glasses is an optical element. Traditionally, people have 3, 4, or 5 of these lenses stacked on top to slowly bend light to go sideways. We do this in one flat layer. Light comes in, it goes this way, that way, and we control it. There's nothing left to chance. We design these metasurfaces based on the inventions going back to Professor Capasso and his early work and his Harvard work. And we have the exclusive access to the entire IP that Professor Capasso in his lab has created that is with us, Metalenz, and we're building products based on this technology. And we stop researching and developing. We're now productizing, we're doing our rifle shot.
Wow.
And we are in 2 spaces. One is machine vision. Well, they're both machine vision. One is machine vision 3D depth sensing. Typically, the industry uses near-infrared light because in depth sensing, you need to have a controlled signal going out so that you can understand the reflection. It tells you how far away your object is. It can tell you something about the shape. That's what machine vision does. That's how your LiDAR system works in a car, or your radar system works. You send out a wave, you wait for it to come back, and then you analyze what you got, and you know the distance or something else about the object you hit. Visible optics or near-infrared optics work the same way. So traditionally, people put a lot of lenses on top of their image sensor and their laser light or their LED light that goes out to create the infrared signal and the comeback to properly create the optical effects that they're going after. And we say, forget about this. Replace your lenses with a single flat lens. We design for you the meta surface that can control the flow of the photons just the way you need to get best results. And our first and biggest success was in 2022 when we struck a licensing agreement with STMicroelectronics, who is one of the leading providers of depth sensing solutions in that market space. Mm-hmm. And they're also a semiconductor company, but it's all kind of in-house mostly. So they build modules and full solutions. They have wholeheartedly embraced us. They have licensed our technology. We designed for them the optical solutions, and in all their depth sensing products that they're selling today, they're using meta-surface optics based on this IP coming out of Harvard that we have and the designs we created for them. And by now, there have been over 100 million units shipped, replacing traditional optics with these flat meta-surface optics made in a foundry. And one more word, while STMicroelectronics is a good fit and partner for us, they not only are a leading provider in the depth sensing space, where they also have algorithms and complete camera modules, they're also a semiconductor foundry. And we have a semiconductor optical technology. And they said, gee, not only is this thing flatter and more temperature resistant and higher performance, but if I stop buying optics from a third party and I make them in my own foundry, I'm also saving money. Right. So it's a win-win-win for everybody involved, and it's really exciting. And we now have together in this partnership, a very, very large market share in this 3D depth sensing optics market that has allowed us to revector, as I said earlier. At Metalenz, we've also made a shift. We made a shift not because we failed, but we made the shift because we were very successful, and there wasn't really much else left to do in the depth sensing space. There were incremental opportunities, but not the game-changing types. And if you're in a small company, you always want to find out, how can I maximize value? What else can I do next to get bigger and more attractive, to either go public long-term or to be acquired? Those are the two exits that are most popular. The shutdown option is not so attractive. So we developed a system using our own optics, swallowing our own medicine, and said, what can we do with these awesome optics that nobody else can do? And the team has delivered something that is even more unique than just shrinking a lens stack into a flat layer. We are also the only company that can provide a solution that can sense the polarization state of light in commercial-grade equipment. What you need to know about optics, and you may remember high school or college, that light, photons are electromagnetic waves, and they swing in one plane, and the next photon swings in a different plane. 360 degrees. It's chaos. Sunlight, chaos. Your illumination, your chaos. It's diffuse. The waves swing in all directions. It's called unpolarized light. It hits my face, the reflection gets polarized.
Right.
And laymen know that best from the lakeside effect. You look at the lake, the sun shines, it's extremely bright. The reflection is brighter than the actual sunlight because all the light polarizes in one plane when it reflects and hits you in the face. And that's why you have sunglasses with polarization filters, because it's not fun. So light undergoes a transformation when it hits objects and gets reflected back. And the properties that change in polarization are twofold. It is the shape. The reflection is rectangular to the shape. So as you angle around my finger, my nose, my head, the polarization in different parts of my face will resemble the shape of my face. You can calculate shape if only you can sense polarization. Today, nobody can do it. There's something else you can do that's almost more exciting. You can tell the material that the reflection came from. I could be sitting here holding up a mask of myself, as I am right now. As the light reflects, my face will polarize differently than this trusted mask. But if a camera looks at this mask, says the landmarking, the facial recognition, this is Lars and this is Lars. So I don't know who's alive.
It will unlock itself.
Yeah, it will unlock your phone, and I will show you later. What we can tell with polarization is material properties, flash, my jeans, the corduroy that I'm sitting on, or whatever else it is. A plastic cup that you gave me, thank you very much, versus a nice crystal, which you kept for the next visitor.
Is sure.
With polarization, we can tell these things.
Well,
and how can we do this? And how can I make these claims and be somewhat credible?
Right.
Because in these metasurface optics that we design, we can create structures at the nanometer scale that are shaped in a way and arranged in a way that when the light travels through, the polarization will impact where the light goes when it comes out on the other side. That is how we deal with polarization. And we do polarization unlike your sunglasses, which filter light. Filtering means the light that you don't want, you filter out, you throw away the energy.
Right.
If you filter polarization, you lose too much of the energy that you need for your machine vision to make good decisions. So we are not throwing light away, we're just sending it in controlled directions so it lands on the image sensor in a way where we know exactly where it went. And we collect it later and we reconstruct an image of the object we're looking at that in grayscale at the intensity level is indistinguishable from a camera that can't do polarization. So on the surface, we look like any other camera. And then we take that same image and we say, let's reconstruct the polarization. And you will see things that are extremely colorful because we represent polarization angles in color scale so humans can relate to what's going on. And then we train machine learning models to allow us to do things that are currently not really doable for other technologies or other companies, getting us into this space around polarization sensing.
So this is all marvelous. Of course, it's incredible technology that you guys are working on. But at the end of the day, it's all about the application, the use of application. I mean, I see how it can work incredibly for this. What other applications are you guys working on?
So we have a lot of discussions, and I think we'll talk, as you've already seen my mask in my own head, about the application in biometrics.
Okay.
Which is huge. Secure biometrics, affordably done instantaneously, hack-proof. That's where we stand with our main product line. We're having a number of discussions in the LiDAR space. Imagine a car that can know when the road is not wet but icy. No vision system can tell you if you're looking at black ice or a moist road.
Right.
When you hit the brakes, it makes all the difference. So we can tell the polarization reflection of ice is different from water when it's molten. So when it's liquid, we go into robotics, into warehousing, pick and place. And knowing that this is plastic and how you grip it versus the crystal mug I was talking about earlier is fairly important in order to be efficient. A lot of machine vision systems can't even see a plastic cup. They look right through it.
Oh.
So when you pick and place, you just wipe.
Smack.
So we're in robotics, and then we also talk about shape sensing, depth sensing.
Right.
We can do wellness sensing. For example, you can look at the skin, and skin changes with your well-being. Dehydration or dry skin is different from fresh skin. If you keep looking at your face, you can see changes, and it can give you alerts that either you need a cup of tea or you need moisturizer or you need to see a dermatologist.
Right.
We know that we can tell from a polarization response if some of my freckles or my moles here are cancerous or not. We can scan for lesions. You could take a phone where this application is implied and you could do a preliminary check that tells you you should check with an expert. We believe that we can measure air quality. If you can send out a signal and you measure the reflection, the polarization will tell you something about the concentration and the kind of molecules you may have in the optical path. So we can give you air quality indications from cameras like this. We do see a fairly broad variety of applications beyond biometrics where this can add value.
Wow.
And one more lesson, if I may.
Yes.
I see a lot of applications that I can't see. which means you need to get new technology out. You need to enable developers that are creative. There may be people having ideas that this is just what I need. Let me try if I can do something unique, because people try to differentiate every day, finding niches to apply themselves using hardware that's off the shelf. The creativity in the iTunes App Store and in the Android App Store, what people try to promote is out of this world. You give them a new camera, a new way of seeing the world, they will come up with new use that you and I will struggle to anticipate. So there's a lot more to come, I'm sure of.
So, all right, let's thank you for that entice explanation, Lars. Very well explained. So, and I need to put my business hat on here, right?
Please do.
My focus, if I was in Metalenz's position, would be, I've got a great piece of technology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to the number one customer that I can target in the world and get them to adopt it. If I genuinely feel that technology is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
In the consumer world, we can definitely say that these folks here, Apple, this will be the perfect customer for Metalenz. Why have they not adopted your solution yet? Or have they adopted their solution now? That's the question. The NDA. Where's the button? NDA. No, please tell me.
Yeah, there are NDAs and there's some. Obviously, nothing I see here now or later when I mention certain company names implies a direct relationship. But I do want to be able to respond to that in a way where I say Apple does this and other people do that.
Yeah.
And this is where the opportunity space lies for us. Having said that, I would like to take one step back, because there are now teardowns out that identify use of meta-surface optics in major leading consumer electronic brands for depth sensing and for manipulating the flow of light in a more efficient way. There's a company in France called Yole Group, YOLE, or System Plus.
Yep.
They do these teardowns. They have identified, because they follow STMicroelectronics, they have identified use of STMicroelectronics time-of-flight modules in Samsung Galaxy smartphones, in Google Pixel smartphones, and they have identified that in these modules there are now flat optics being used. The flat optics don't say a name of where they came from, but they're in these ST modules. Let's just leave it at that.
Right.
And more recently, in 2024, they have identified that in the new iPad Pro, for the first time ever, Apple was able to integrate Face ID. Face ID is the secure face unlock solution that Apple uses in all the iPhones and in many of their thicker tablets. They've never been able to get into the super thin ones because there is a bezel that does not allow the traditional solutions to fit in.
Okay.
Now Apple came out with a product that has Face ID. The Yole Group did a teardown and they said, oh, that's how they did it. There is a meta-surface optic in here. And, we'll just leave it at that.
Fair. So I would be intrigued now. I mean, we've got people watching this could say, Lars, is this concept just a concept? Is this just a PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it really a reality perspective? But I believe that we can prove them wrong right now.
Let's do it.
You ready?
The polarization is in the pudding, as we say.
Let's check it out.
I'm somewhat prepared. I have here
Awesome.
a development platform that we use. What this is, in addition to saying Polar ID, we are targeting the market. So let me take one step back. I already mentioned, and you may see here me with my mask, we're targeting biometric solutions, and we're going after consumer electronic spaces where fast, secure, and convenient opening of your device is a priority. Apple uses Face ID. It's very secure. It's very fast. It's the gold standard. On the Android side, nobody else has anything used for. Some companies use for unlock their selfie camera, like my trusted Google Pixel 9 Pro. A very nice phone. I look at it. I click and it opens up. I just tapped on the screen, the sensor wakes up, it opens up, you see my home screen. Now, if I do this with my alter ego, who I call Larry, Larry will look at my phone and it will open up.
Wow.
With an iPhone, that couldn't happen, but with...
Let's go. Let's get that right on the camera one more time. Let's see that.
Let's do it. Make sure I'm not in here, so there's no faking. And here we go. Larry opens up.
Wow.
It's really funny. They use the selfie camera, apply a lot of AI technology in order to figure out who is it. You look at a mask like this. This is an expensive mask, It's not...
Oh, that looks like something out of Madame Tussauds, that. Yes.
Hello. I'm not at that level yet, so
wow.
They don't have busts of us. But this is the holy grail of face unlock security. And many technologies that they try to do conveniently with the existing selfie camera, they don't work well enough to reject spoofs like this, or even a mask like this that I can put on to try to get into my phone. And we are working with the Android crowd and say we have a better way. We're using a polarization signature to not only tell who it is, but to tell if he's real or not. So Let me do this now with the demo kit.
Okay.
What we have implemented is a polarization sorting camera using our technology. It has a near-infrared sensor on top of which we have integrated a flat optic. The optic takes the incoming infrared light and sorts the polarization and exposes it onto discrete pixels. We then recombine the image and we know which pixel has what polarization to allow us to do what I'm about to show you. And for those in the audience that understand imaging, this sounds awfully like a color filter on an image sensor. Yes, it's a Bayer pattern. You have RGB, and then you demosaic, as they call it in the industry, and you get beautiful color images on your camera. We do the same. We sort polarization, we demosaic, for lack of a better word, and we get beautiful polarization images of the object we're looking at that allows us to say, is this real or not? And we have machine learning models developed that help us with that.
Wow.
So here's the application we developed. It's a Qualcomm Snapdragon platform, which is very popular in the Android smartphone environment. It runs a high-end 8550, which is one of their product names from last year. It has a display. The display has a selfie camera, so in a minute you can see yourself or the microphone or myself. The selfie camera is only there to center the view. And then on top, we have our polarization sensing camera and we have an infrared light source. So what I'm doing now, I say unlock again. Now you see the viewfinder. That's the selfie camera here on the right-hand side. And if I shadow it, it all goes away. And if I look at myself and I click unlock, it says invalid image, which is good because I had too much of an angle. Invalid image means I'm not sure what I'm looking at. I'm not letting you in. So let me look at it straight. And here it says, hello, Larry.
Wow. Okay.
And let me show you what has happened. There are two things happening. We take one image, two things happen. I told you that we create intensity images that look as pretty as anybody else's in the industry. You don't know that there was polarization involved. It's all gone. This image is used to extract my landmarks and compare my landmarks against the registered face. But this could be 2D or it could be Larry because the landmarks for me are the same. That is where the polarization comes in. It's impossible to see for your listeners, viewers. Go to the Metalenz website. We have images and videos. This is the polarization signature, as we call it. And you could say, if I hold this closer to you, I'm blue in the face. And indeed I am. Yeah. But when we look at my silicon mask here in a minute, it will look different in the face. And the machine learning models that we have trained to recognize the differences can tell that's the human that goes with a recognized face versus that's a spoof that goes with a recognized face. So let me do it again. Let me also, for kicks, try another mask. It's still me. I am going to unlock. I see myself. And it says
There you
access
go.
denied.
Wow.
The landmarking in the intensity, you can't tell. You, as a human, you get right away, he's wearing a mask.
Yeah.
The intensity image can't tell that. The polarization view is so different that the machine learning model can say right away, something is off here. And the Google phone is so poor that every once in a while, even this mask will open up my phone. Come on. There we have it. So, these masks can easily trick selfie camera-based solutions. Now let me do something else. Because it's hard to appreciate the difference, I will do what we call a double header, where I have both my mask and myself in the view.
Mm-hmm.
And you see here that the viewfinder, the face detection box, has focused on me. And it has opened the phone.
Okay. Can you lift that up a little bit closer to the... Wow, okay.
You see it let me in because it had two things in the viewfinder. And the yellow box is what we use for face recognition. And then it also uses my polarization signature to let in the person. Now, what you do see when you look at the mask long enough, and I don't necessarily encourage you to squint too hard, but the polarization response, and we have about 1.6 megapixel resolution in our images, is noticeably different between this silicon mask compared to my flesh.
Wow.
The shape is the same. The polarization from shape is retained. But the material properties of my face versus the mask are so different that we can deny access right away. So I'm doing it with my body here. I'll make sure that I'll prop him up in a useful way. I hit unlock with him in the viewfinder. And there was something off. Come on. Ugh. So it says access denied. And what I'm really trying to show is that he looks different yet again from what you have when you look at a human. And I'll do another double header here to show the difference.
Man, that is so freaky.
Yeah, and now I'll hand it over.
Look at that.
The system has found me again, but when you look at the polarization, you begin to see that the blues and the depths of blue...
You can see the colors, the bottom of the chin area.
Is quite
like
different.
The forehead side, yeah.
And we train machine learning models from all angles, take images with accessories. We do it with sunscreen, with lipstick and all kinds of things to make sure that in everyday use, this will always work and be highly secure. So that was a very long way not to answer your question, because they really asked me, who in the consumer electronics space may be interested in this? And you already mentioned that Apple has Face ID solution. They do what we do in a way that is physically very different. Just a brief Face ID explanation, and compared to what we do in our system, they're also using infrared light because you need a light source, otherwise it doesn't work in the dark.
Right.
Every good face unlock solution uses a light source, an LED on infrared light. They take an intensity image and they recognize it's Salah or it's Lars or it's somebody else, or I don't know who it is, and the phone stays shut. And once they've taken that intensity image, they don't really know much more than that. They turn on the structured light projector, as it's called by Apple and in the industry. It's a structured light solution that sends out 30,000 tiny infrared dots. They hit your face and everything around you. They reflect back. They measure the reflection, and a dot that hits you on the nose and shape gets distorted. And based on the distortion of these tiny dots, they can compute the shape of your face. And it's a quite accurate technology, you would be amazed, which is why they don't struggle with superheads the way other solutions do. So they send out this point cloud and it comes back, but it's an entirely separate illumination mode from what you do for an intensity image. An intensity image is like one of the flashlights you have, a diffuser. You get light everywhere, you see the reflection, you can tell who it is. And they don't know if it's 2D, 3D, or anything in between. So they send the point cloud from the reflection of the points and the distortion of the pattern. They compare it to the registered point cloud response and say, It's actually really Saleh. It's him. And then they do some other inferences to make sure that this is not, the silicon version of him. We do all this without any structured light. We don't need any of it. We just need a simple infrared camera that has our polarization sensor on top instead of a other filter that you might usually find that allows us to have smaller footprint, lower Z height, and less than half the cost of a structured light solution. That is what we're currently discussing with the Android smartphone makers. Almost all of them. The only one we're not discussing it with, unfortunately, is Huawei because of politics. As an American company, in the geopolitical climate we're in, we're not able to talk to.
Why? I mean, I understand, but I mean, is it to talk to Huawei? Is that because most of the time it's because of national security issues or whatever. Is that really a national security problem?
No, if you're reasonable, it's not. But Huawei is on the entity list.
So they're not allowed to get anything?
Politically dislike that ties to the Chinese government, military, whatever.
I see.
You just can't touch Huawei as a US company these days. If you're promoting new technology, you can't go there. It's not worth the trouble.
Understand.
But everybody else, Samsung, Google, Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, Honor, they're all in play for us. They ship 1.5 billion phones every year, and none of them have a secure face unlock solution.
So under that condition then, and sorry to sound a bit on the other side, or maybe a skeptic, as one would say, if the Samsungs of the world and the Oppos and so forth, they're already selling phones without such a hack solution involved, right? Hack-proof solution involved. Why is it important for them to add this?
So in the smartphone world, you have flagship phones that cost $1,200 or euros, $1,500. You have folding phones that are even more expensive.
Right.
And then you have more mass market affordable phones, and then you have cheap phones. High level, those three categories. And for these OEMs to differentiate, they are desperate for something that makes them look different than the other guys. And they're always envious of what Apple does. The biggest innovator in China is whatever Apple does. 6 months later, you get in a Chinese phone. They copy it as best as they can. It kind of looks like often it doesn't work quite as well.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of competitive energy where people are trying to say, I want my flagship to look more like what an iPhone can do than anybody else has. And Face Unlock is one of those because, one-handed use when you pull your phone out of and then you need to hit the fingerprint button. You and I, we have reasonably sizable hands. We can reach many places to do that with fingerprint.
Right.
But it's not as fast. It's not as secure. Fingerprint is not nearly as secure. And most of all, it's not convenient. So there is good interest that we're seeing in the Android flagship market, which, if you add it all up, is 200 plus million units, just as many as are selling iPhones. So for us, that is an extremely rich target.
Right.
But we're not ignoring the other half of the market. That would be a really interesting application. You need to put yourself in their shoes. They have invested in the structured light solution and developed an ecosystem around it, integrated it into all their phones, and create near ironclad security. The switching effort and energy takes some convincing, and they need to be really sure that this is really better and offers them some significant advantages. Right. Just replace one technology with another one that's almost like we're half the size, we're much flatter. We can go into form factors that, they may not be able to take Face ID into. I just mentioned the teardown that identified in this new super slim iPad, there's a meta surface on the traditional structured light system.
Right.
Polar ID can go even smaller. We go down to 2.5 millimeters. There's not a place in the consumer electronics where we can't fit our face unlock solution. We're also going after laptop market segments into thin bezels in tablets. And I think they, they're smart people. They have lots of R&D. They know what polarization can do. They understand what Metalenz as a company can do. You can hear all about it on your podcast, or you can reach out to our website.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I'm trying to see day-to-day applications where this can come really handy. And it's very important. Maybe my knowledge is not up to date on this perspective, but now airports, it's all face recognition. Well, in the really developed countries, so let's say in Dubai, where I'm from, where I live, I can go to the airport, go in there. I don't even use my passport anymore. I don't take my passport out of my bag. I just go there, I show my face, and it recognizes my face, recognizes my name, and then I go through the gate.
Mm-hmm.
What type of cameras are they using? Are they using non-hack-proof cameras, or?
So here's the point. They're using visible light cameras.
Okay.
And they have a light, typically.
The green light
goes off. Yeah, there's a light going off when you stand in front of it. They illuminate your face to make sure it's well exposed. Mm-hmm. And then they do traditional face recognition.
Okay.
Because if you go to the security officer and you hold this one up to get through security with your ticket in it, it's not going to work.
That's why they always have someone there keeping an eye.
You sure?
Really? Wow. Okay.
There are people involved to make sure there isn't somebody holding up a paper printout of Salah or Lars and they step in front of the security camera.
Okay, got it.
Their requirements are quite different, but let me take you into a different space.
What about someone just randomly just wears a mask? I mean, that guy in immigration could be on his phone on TikTok. You just wear that mask and you could be someone.
Could be. Let's go to an ATM. Nobody's watching.
Nobody's watching an ATM. Yeah.
But I'm getting straight at your money. I think you'd be much more interested in making sure that I don't get into your bank account, that I knocked you over, took your ticket, and I'm flying to London instead of you.
Right.
That's also not a good scenario. But there is a lot more day-to-day security in the digital identity and payment space, where you stand in front of a kiosk to authenticate yourself, where there is nobody there to make sure that there is a body attached to the head, or that there's not somebody holding a good-looking paper print in front of the camera. So that's where we see a really interesting opportunity. And part of what's unique is that if a technology is out in market for too long, hackers will try to break it day and night, and eventually they may get close. Sometimes they may succeed. You come with a polarization camera and they say, oh my God, I need to go back to high school math, What is polarization? How would I ever be able to crack that one? You have a built-in 5-year lead when nobody can really touch the system because they don't know how it works. To reinvent this wheel by opening the camera is not possible. You can't. You need to, break into our company and sneak off the design files and understand what you're looking at. So it has a level of embedded uniqueness that's always with new technologies. Everybody says, what just happened?
So clearly, I mean, of course, the successes you've had with previous companies, you've clearly spotted something. Maybe it's like some sort of hindsight power that you might have, and along with your team. When working with a disruptive technology, let's say with this optical technology that you're dealing with at the moment, or metasurface, that's the word, metasurface technology. How are you working with using to identify your initial target market to ensure, of course, that you've got efficient adoption, but most importantly, monetization?
Yeah. So it goes back to what we discussed a little earlier as well. There's this matchmaking, because what can the technology really do? A lot of times when people come up with something new, they're so excited, they're bubbling, they don't think about the application space. And you translate this, and you need to be lucky enough that you know certain market segments well, and you can assess, is there a good fit for us to go after?
Right.
And these optics, when you come with a new technology that can do more than other technologies, you start with what are the premium applications. We don't want to sell these, by the pound, and compete on cost. They can do too much. They're too valuable. So that led us to 3D depth sensing, where is a really good fit for the technology strengths and the application needs. And then the polarization for biometrics, that was also starting early almost going back to the Harvard days and experimenting with, now we have these cameras, what else can we possibly see? What is in light that is unique, that gives us information? That's when the PhDs were scratching their head, and they understand the electromagnetic waves and the propagation of waves and charges and the polarization aspects and the unique value you could get if only you could do it at the commercial grade. And just because you can do it doesn't mean you can monetize it, because who's going to pay you for it? So I think we were very fortunate that we're living in a time where security will only be more important as we move forward. On your phone, protecting your identity wherever you can, as best as you can. So biometrics is a vibrant space, if you like it or not. You mentioned without shrugging that you go to the airport, they take a picture of you, they already know who you are, they know you have a ticket or you don't, Unfortunately, surveillance is with us. So escaping it. Certain countries have less of it and you still have more rights and freedoms, but it's here to stay. And then be able to make sure that it's actually good is important. So it's a good market fit for us for this machine vision system. Some of the other applications that I mentioned in material classification, in robotics, are also fun. And I tried something earlier that I can show you here in a different application that is not biometrics, but it's material classification. So I can just use this camera not to detect a face, but to look at materials. So what I'll be looking at is your gray couch next to my gray pants and see if I see a noticeable difference. It says success because we didn't change the app. It wasn't success. It just takes an image. And now you see, if you look at this picture, my gray pants are really green and the underlying couch, which is also gray, is very bright. So when it comes to classifying materials, we have done some fun tests, leather gloves and faux leather gloves. They are polarizing totally different. We have looked at silk scarves and polyester scarves. They feel good. They look pretty. They polarize totally different. So we can do fun stuff. We look at fresh vegetables and rotten vegetables, and because of the decay, they look different in polarization. So there are other niches that people can use polarization for.
It's quite funny actually. I downloaded an app not that long ago. You can find anything on the App Store. Really, where it detects when your plant, when you're how sick is your plant. So it'll take a picture of your plant. It will tell you where's the plant from, and based on the color of, and it's just a normal camera, so I don't know what your camera will be able to do, but it'll detect how much water is being given, when not to give it water, how to keep it alive, how to keep it going. There's so many applications that people don't even realize that it can actually work.
And they all use imaging combined with machine learning.
Correct.
Because a machine can only tell that the plant doesn't look healthy if somebody initially trained it looking at a lot of plants of this particular type that are not healthy.
All right.
So you go by the shape of the leaf to say, oh, okay, it's a yucca plant or whatever else it is. And this one looks fresh and green, and this one looks wrinkly, whatever. And we can take it one level deeper because infrared light penetrates the surface. So we can actually look at moisture content, at oily contents, at liquid contents. As I mentioned, some of the wellness applications you can develop with polarization imaging. It's a transition that you can think machine vision comes out of the black and white age, and somebody just turned on the colors. And then you see red and green and blue and everything else in between, and you know the difference between black coffee and ketchup, just based on the color. Right now, in infrared machine vision systems, a lot of things just look the same. You get the polarization that look very different all of a sudden.
Yeah. So what about in terms of, I'm trying to jump in here with your market roadmap strategy, market ideas and applications. Crime. What about with crime? Where we live, we've just on one street, we have about, not one street, one beach. There's about 1,000 cameras there. How would your method work on it? How would your application work on a street?
So
when it comes to crime, and that's why they have so many security cameras. I mean, even in China, in Shanghai, I think it's like, or London as well, we have like the most cameras so you can have.
Yes, you get uninterrupted non-stop action of yourself as you walk down the street.
Right.
Those are typically visible light cameras, and sometimes they have bright lights, especially on the highways. The polarization, they want to know who it is supposed to be. They do face recognition.
Right.
And your requirements are quite different with respect to the distance resolution you need. In the lingo, they translate it to, I need this many pixels on the face to reliably recognize a person. That doesn't mean you authenticate a mask, I don't see the use case where on the beach they want to tell if he's on the beach or if he's on the beach.
Right.
They just want to know Lars, which one is Lars, how both are Lars. That's good enough.
Right.
And these cameras work 20 meters, 50 meters away.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A lot of the visible light cameras, they can zoom in. It's crazy.
Right.
You can tell how far they can work based on how far the surveillance masts are in China. And it's about 50 meters. That means the camera can give you 25 meters and they overlap.
That's marvelous.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about more on the supply chain perspective in terms of the strategic partnerships that Metalenz works. I mean, you mentioned, STMicroelectronics. How crucial are partnerships with the whole ecosystem? So, when you talk about like the OEMs, the foundries, or other ecosystem players when introducing new novel solutions like meta-surface optics.
Oh, they're absolutely essential. And here again, it depends on the product you have and what you bring to market and what your market and your customers look like. But in our case, bringing a machine vision system to sophisticated consumer electronics and IoT device makers, the likes of Apple, Samsung, Google, all the Chinese OEMs, and then drone makers, robot makers, they look at 50 people and say, you're nuts. It's not going to work. So we partner on the image sensor. We do the meta-surface optic that polarizes, and we work with an established image sensor maker. We take an image sensor that is in mass production, that has been fully qualified, designing and bringing these to market, millions and millions that we don't have, expertise we don't have. So we partner with somebody, and what's in it for them is that if we're successful, they're selling a lot more of their image sensors.
Right.
Win-win. So it's a strategic and a synergetic fit. So our image sensor is 2% us with the most crucial piece, and 98% exists already, is fully proven, and it de-risks for the customer that says, does your camera work? How do you do photon collection? How do you do charge conversion? How do you give me a bitmap? We don't do any of it. It exists already. We take the bitmap and we reconstruct the polarization image. And then we go up the stack and we work with partners. Face recognition algorithms are 20 plus years old. Why would we use some of our 50 people to reinvent what's been hardened to perfection? Right. So we have partnerships that bring in non-essential pieces that are not the differentiated secret sauce that we have, where we can leverage best in class. And again, the benefit to our partners is I can sell more if you're successful. We work with established camera module makers, most of which are in Asia, the likes of Semco, LG IT in Korea, or you have Sunny, Omnilight, you have AAC and QTech, and they're used to buying image sensors, putting optics on top, putting a laser next to it. They do that all day long. We explain to them our reference design. They say, done here, easy. They build the modules for us. So that brings us back to our core strengths. And we then take the whole system because we're the only ones that really fully understand how it works. And we promote and sell it to the end customer. While having a recipe and a set of partners in our ecosystem that when the customer says, okay, let me do a factory audit, they love it. Nobody loves it, but it happens all the time. They want to make sure you can deliver. You follow, certified processes, you're ISO qualified, so it's not a fly-by-night operation and nobody knows what's in your software. It's architected properly, because if they put us in the flagship smartphone or laptop or into an ATM kiosk, you want to make sure it works.
Yeah.
You just don't want the ATM to dispense money all day long because of face recognition. It's off. So, there's a lot of scrutiny, and we outsource as much as we can into a partnership of companies that would win if we win.
Marvelous. What I would love to learn from the plethora of experience that you've had with disruptive technologies is disruptive technologies require a lot of educating customers about new possibilities. And especially when you have, what is the definition of disruptive? Is somebody is just used to something, it works well for them, and they don't want to change the way in terms of buying adoption, their buying adoption is kind of stalled. How do you balance that need for market educations with the urgency of, driving success for the company or revenue?
Yeah, that's your traditional dynamics. You have early adopters and you have late adopters, and then you have crossing the chasm and going to mass market and tipping points and Simon Gladwell or whatever. And it's all real. You just need to find out the dynamics in your particular space. And you brought up, the big incumbent that's using hundreds of millions of face unlock solutions today. Why would they jump early on something new if they have a really good proven secure solution and they don't need to break a sweat?
Yes.
If, however, we're able to poke the bear by being successful with Google or Samsung or Oppo, and then maybe they say, dang, this thing is real.
It's
cheaper and smaller, perhaps. If I ever bring out a folding phone, I want to have face unlock in my folding phone, and there's no way for me to put structured light in because it's too thick.
Right.
The thickness can't shrink any more than what they've already been able to do. By going to the optics part that we discussed earlier, if you want to go any lower, you give up in resolution, so you shrink the camera and everything else shrinks with it. There's a linear relationship, but they can't give up resolution and they can't securely tell who's in front of the camera. Right. So they're kind of stuck in a very unique challenge. So the big guys are hardly ever the first movers. You find the innovators around them that need to make a name, need to build a brand, or need to salvage their phone business, whatever the case is. And we're engaged with some of them to get this party going, if you wish.
I see.
And I do believe, especially in Android, if one gives, many others will say, oh, dang, I need to respond, even if I was hoping it wouldn't happen. And you have customers like this. They say, this is really clever. I just hope nobody uses it because then I don't have to use it either.
They're in deep trouble.
And you pull them along as you go. Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, that's interesting. So, and then going from that to the next stage of the business where you're like scaling and about profitability. So once a product that you've worked on gains traction, how do you transition from like initial success to scale up mode without losing the sight of innovation and customer value, which tends to happen when you leave that company because it gets sold to a larger company and then it's gone some of the times. But
so scaling is an interesting challenge. It's great to have because it means there's lots of business, but it's very expensive to scale up.
Okay.
You need to pre-build an infrastructure and a team for that business to materialize, and then you focus your resources. So there is a transition period where as a company you have less budget to do fun stuff. You need to buckle down, use all your resources to scale your business. Fortunately, we're fabless. So for us, our foundry partners can ship 100 of millions, and they would love to, if you give them 3 to 6 months notice. The tape out and the semiconductor process is fully proven. They got the master ready to go. So providing the optics and having the image sensor, in our case, publicly announced, we're working with Samsung LSI, Samsung Semiconductor business. We're using their image sensor on our product today. Okay. And they are ready to scale. They're one of the 2 largest image sensor makers in the world. So we have the hardware scalability, making optics, making camera modules. Out of the 1.5 billion smartphones that sell every year, they have on average 3 cameras. That's 5 billion cameras. What's another 100 million in the first year? Right. It doesn't stress the supply chain. And the software solution, we integrated on Qualcomm in the Android biometric environment already. It just means we send you more copies or you copy it yourself, As long as we have a valid license relationship and you're a valid user of ours, scaling is not as big an issue as you would imagine because so much of what we do leverages mass product from big companies already to allow us to be innovative with a stable supply chain.
Marvelous. Thank you. So I'm here. I'm working on a story here. So we've got the beginning. Now we've got the middle. Now let's talk about the end. So at Cavendish Kinetics, at B-Seam Communications, at Flarion, you helped steer these companies towards profitable exits, evidently. What factors do you see as essential for a successful exit strategy in the semiconductor or hardware optics?
Mm. So first of all, I'm sitting here, we're having a fun discussion. It's not me. I am always part of a team. It's never just one guy. They have great ideas. It's a mix. You need to be in a good team.
Right.
Then you can be fortunate to be successful. Small company startups, it's a team sport. It's the most important thing. It's even more important than your technology is your team.
Right.
So I just want to make sure it doesn't sound like I have this, that, and the other. I've been part of it. I think I made very useful and important contributions, but there were always many others that also made useful contributions. Now, how do you exit the business? I think they exit themselves, honestly. If you're successful and you can scale and you can get the money to scale, you have the choice to go public. Because when you get past the scaling and you actually have the business, you start making a lot of money. Semiconductor margins, 60 points. We sell software on top. We may have some licensing deals. We will be a highly profitable business if we can get that far. If companies like what we do because it's synergistic to them, and they realize what I said at the beginning, we are the only ones today that have the IP and the know-how to bend light in the way we need to create these capabilities. Somebody may say, I cannot allow this company to go this far, and I'll make them an offer they can't refuse. That's how you exit in success case. And then it comes down, what is that offer that the board of directors can't refuse? Just beyond my pay grade. The investors will get a say and saying, we're ballsy, we're feeling really good today. We're rejecting the offer because we do believe in you going public, and then the multiple is even higher. Or they say, I could really use a good exit in my portfolio right now.
Get it done.
5x, 8x, we're done here. Good deal.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy. So that obviously only happens when you're successful and when you're on the verge of cracking a code in a way that nobody else has been able to. And we may have the guts. It reminds me a lot of my first opportunity in Flarion with this new data technology where Qualcomm just couldn't resist and they couldn't allow us to go to market at the end of the day. And they wrote a check that was big enough for the investors and everybody else to say, yep, done.
Wow.
And we'll see what the future holds for us. We're at the beginning of the pipe opening up in an incredible way for us. So it's really exciting at Metalenz these days.
So talking of the future, you got sensing and imaging, of course, they're becoming, it's mandatory, it's central to any, it's like breathing air, drinking water to live, to consumer electronics. Of course, I think we haven't spoken about AR, VR properly as well. And automotive applications. Where do you see meta-surface optics fitting in these growing trends over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think they can play a crucial role. Let's start with AR, VR, which you mentioned, and then we move to automotive. In AR, VR, one of the most fought over spaces is augmented reality glasses of some sort. The question is, how much can I pack into my glasses to keep the weight low enough so that people want to use them for more than half an hour? You can't overload them. You need to manage power, but you need to manage form factor. So there's a lot of sensing going on in order to make them useful. It's called eye tracking.
Yeah.
Sure, you heard of eye tracking. Eye tracking uses infrared technology. We're in infrared technology. We shrink the lenses. We make the cameras smaller. They can sit more elegantly in places that are agreeable to eye tracking, because when you eye track, then you can do what Apple Vision does. You look sideways and Siri or whoever else is built into this Apple Vision headset knows what you're looking at and they can do touchless actions. Eye tracking is a key application to drive up usability in the AR space. And then in the automotive space, to move over to that, the optics are very useful in autonomous driving applications where you have LiDAR.
Okay.
LiDAR is light-based sensing of what's ahead of you and what these optics can do. And I'm not talking about polarization right now. We'll get to that in a minute.
Right.
Just the optics. We have a bigger field of view. We can see more from a single optic than other systems. we can create more precise and richer patterns that the machine vision system will interpret as to what's in front of me. Is a lane turning? Are there obstacles? What are those obstacles? The better your patterns are, the more you can see, the fewer sensors you can use to be efficient, and you don't need to overburden the system economically by compensating for your lack of vision with having multiple systems. So there is a great place for us. Automotive design cycles are very long, which is why smaller companies are looking for other places first. We, I think, found a good one. And then polarization, biometrics in automotive, you have in-cabin sensing, you have face recognition. You want to make sure the right person is in front of the wheel. This technology is also good for possibly eye tracking. And we have visions where in AR, not only do we do eye tracking, but when I put on my glasses, the glasses don't know who just put them on. They just know they're on. Based on the motion sensor and the motion, they know they're on, and they're turning on the systems, and you get your AR information. We can possibly integrate polarization-based image sensors that can look at your pupil and recognize you because, and it's known, you can recognize from the iris who it is. But the image sensors that are used for eye tracking are not good enough. If you get the benefit of polarization, you get a whole another order of magnitude of information that may make it possible that when you put on your glasses, they not only track your eyes, but they can immediately tell Lars is wearing Lars's glasses. I'm not wearing Saleh's glasses because you don't want me to wear your glasses. Who knows what I'm seeing? I'm reading your email before you know. So there are
superhero.
There are fun applications that we could enable. The technology has a lot of cute legs. The scenario I just described is not yet proven, but it's feasible.
It's possible.
It's absolutely possible if somebody puts right brains behind it.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to it yet, but we could.
Lars, this has been a profound discussion. Thank you so much for all this information that you've shared kindly. I want to ask you, based on your 25 years of experience and success in the marketing, business development, and launching these disruptive technologies, what advice could you give to emerging entrepreneurs or people that wanting to join a startup company in the field that we're in?
Mm-hmm. So I think, to me, the most essential part is you need to trust your own judgment.
Gut instincts, basically.
Yeah, well, no, it's better coming from up here. Gut
rather than the gut.
Also good.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this, you find a lot of people move in clusters. Okay. Or I'm following Joe because Joe, I heard he was lucky once, or whatever it is. Or I worked with him before and he knows what he's doing and I follow him. You don't just want to blindly follow. You need to apply your own judgment to find opportunities. And what that means is that you can assess, and you're fortunate enough to understand the technology, and you can match it with an opportunity. So you believe in the match, and then you don't have to follow others because you believe they've done it once, they can do it again. I'm signed up, I'm kind of bucking the trend. I've never worked in a company where I followed people I've worked for before. I always find my own. And that's not because I want to prove something, but I said, you're doing this, I'm not seeing it. Good luck. I'll see you later. Maybe in a company down the road. And as a personal, so it's just that I need to feel good about what I'm getting into. I need to be able to see how can this play out.
Right.
Where can I add value? You also want to make sure that you join in a situation where you feel appreciated for the role you're being hired into. And a lot of times, if you're marketing biz dev and semiconductor startups, the technology teams really appreciate people that understand them and can do this translation piece. But you need to believe you don't just go for nameplates. A lot of people are attracted to, they raised X million. It's not a precursor of success. It may be a precursor of them being in business for the next year and a half.
Does it? Let me get in. That's fair. Thank you for that advice. Lars, from your perspective, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know about Metalenz's vision or your personal leadership philosophy or whatever's on your mind?
So I hope that I was able to convey where Metalenz is coming from, the two stages we've gone through, and how they're quite different in go-to-market, and the opportunities ahead of us. I think the one thing that comes out of this, like some of my other examples, and I think many of my colleagues as well, is you need to stay humble and always question what you're doing. How can we do better? What are we missing? Why is this not working faster? Why are we not having more interest? So that you can really point the rifle where it has the biggest splash when bullet is. You got to stay on your toes. There is no room for complacency, and that comes in different ways. When is that opportunity where you could be complacent? I meet a lot of people that think they know already how it's all going to work out, and I mentioned that just 2 minutes ago.
Right.
You need to be able to see how it could. I said how it could work, not how it will work.
Right.
You always need to question, are we still tracking? Is this still a viable way to get into a viable market? And then revector as needed. I think that's super important for anybody in business.
Absolutely. Lars, we have a tradition on the show where the last person leaves a question for the next person. So the question that has been left for you is what would you like your legacy, or what would you like to be remembered in terms of your legacy on Earth?
My legacy on Earth. Oh, wow. I know exactly what it is. I would like my children to be contributing citizens of society, specifically my youngest, who we adopted out of difficult circumstances, and who we spend a lot of time and energy to realize his full potential. That's what I would like people to remember. Forget all the other stuff.
Respect. I mean, that's purpose. And I feel that that's when people will remember your name. That's what they say, right? That's how your name gets carried on. So I think our time is temporary here. Mm-hmm. So I think what we leave for others is how we made them feel, and what do we do to build upon that. And it's a very beautiful message that you've portrayed in that. And rest assured that I know that what you've done is something very, very special. Very, very special.
Yeah, well, you caught me unprepared on that one, but I really believe in the humanity aspect of being on Earth. Not he was in 3 companies, who cares? It's what have you done for the next generation? To do their best and be able to, live in freedom and in a sustainable environment, etc. So there's a lot coming that goes in that direction.
Yeah, I was when I look at the how the future is going to look in the years to come, Lars, is one of those perspectives where I don't worry about myself anymore, but I worry about my kids, because the world's going to look very different in 20 years' time. It will look very, very different in 10 years' time. If you just look at how we've gone just from the last decade to the next decade and the decades to come, let's say already we are in very bizarre times, so the future doesn't give me a little bit of peace.
Yeah, no, we live in crazy times right now more than ever, and it's unfortunate. Why, you asked this, I know it's a super simple question. Why can't we all get along?
Why can't we get along?
What is it? Yeah. What is it between you and I, or us and the Chinese, or whatever it is? What's wrong? What's wrong between Russians and Ukrainians? Why does this have to happen?
We all have there's a just to end the podcast with one statement is at the end of the day, we all bleed the same color.
Yes.
Just simple as that. Lars, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Semiconductor Leadership Podcast. I trust you have learned more. Let's say the best word to describe this podcast is vision, because we're talking about optics at the end of the day. But yeah, absolutely remarkable podcast. Thank you for joining the show. If you are interested about Metalenz and want to learn more about the platform, you can contact or reach out to Lars on the link below. This is his LinkedIn contact information down below here. To anybody watching the show, keep innovating, keep pushing. And most importantly, the message to end the show is, let's collaborate in the support of humanity at the end of the day. So, thank you for joining in. Take care and see you at the next episode. Bye for now.